Legends in Wildcatting panel with Bill Armstrong.
Wow. I thought you had to be dead to be a legend. I may be dead, I don't even know it yet. It's like the sixth sense, I'm walking around and, anyway.
So when our HGS Vice President, Linda Sternbach, asked Bill Armstrong to do this presentation, and Bill accepted, I was ecstatic, because I had the good fortune to work with Bill on a couple of projects, and our most recent project, Bill, was in August in Houston, that special time of year, but it was an image. And I want you to know that Bill's talk was the most attended and talked about afterwards presentation of the whole conference.
Well, I'm gonna talk about that tonight.
Yep.
Everybody came to that night. That was Discovery Thinking, and we had Eastern Mediterranean, Namibia, something in Turkey, and us. And everybody came to see Namibia and Eastern Mediterranean, but they all left talking about Alaska.
Well, you rocked the house. That was a program with Mike Forrest, and when I got good news for everybody. Guess what? Tonight's going to be better. All right. Why? Because when you're at a conference, you only get a short talk. We got Bill all evening.
Good
and
Lord.
He's promised to answer questions, and I know the questions are going to be good because we have wine. Now,
really good one.
Really good wine. Thanks to Bill and Liz Armstrong and Epic. And as they say, in vino veritas. So, why do we do these programs? Because we want to take lessons on how to find giant fields so we can find more, and we want to mentor those who come after us. You're going to hear a lot about client forms tonight. They're on the cover, they're in the book, Memo 125, and one of the things, I've got a copy of it here, is we're seeing the last couple of decades more stratigraphic and combination traps than ever before being found. Blue is carbonates, yellow is sand. Tonight we're going to hear about the great sand reservoirs up in on the North Slope. And those of you who've heard comments before, Bill's going to share with us. Here's the outline for tonight. He's going to share exploration philosophy, going to share stories about Alaska and discovery, and take questions, so everybody be thinking questions. And one of the things as we talk about oil and gas finding, these are the things we've all been classically trained, right? Technology, source rock, reservoir traps, analogs, economics, and how do we put them together in a creative way. You're going to hear a lot of that tonight. So this is my final slide. Thank you, Bill, for letting me use it. I love this slide. So let's take a moment here. On the right, those of us here in Texas know the East Texas field, right? We know the Daisy Bradford discovery well, then the step out to the Lugdella Crim, and 25 miles from the Daisy Bradford was the Lathrop discovery in East Texas. Now, Bill and I were talking about that this weekend. They didn't realize it was one big field yet, because, 30,000 wells had to be drilled to define that. This thing was so big that it just blew everybody's mind. Now, if you look on the left, this is what Bill's going to talk to us about tonight. This is the Pica field. The discovery well, correct me if I get it wrong, Bill, but it's the Cougarak number 3.
Yep.
You want gutsy? They drilled the horseshoe number 1, 21 miles to the south. And it worked. And Bill, you got to tell us how you were feeling when that happened.
No, nobody understands the significance of a gigantic discovery. It reaches your core. I'll tell you all about how we came up with that idea in a little bit.
And just to make it better, there's a guy named Bob Snyder. Bill Demis, you and I had lunch with him one time. Bill used to teach bypass pays and bypass plays for Southwestern Energy and other companies. And Bob Snyder's famous for saying every oil and gas field, on average, has 2.5 wells already in it at the time of discovery. Just wasn't recognized. And it's like, no way, that can't be. How could somebody miss something? Okay, there's low resistivity pay up here, And Bill, part of your story is you guys saw some things that others did. So here's the question from Bill Lancaster, our buddy in Denver. I was in contact with him this week, and I said, Bill, what's a good way to hand over to Bill? He said, just ask Bill Armstrong how an independent, small independent company in Denver can go to Alaska and run with the big dogs. So take it away, Bill.
I don't.
I'm going to set up your slides here.
I'm to Billy Lancaster, who, by the way, got extremely rich off of our project. Just as a side, I said, big companies have a lot of people and they have a big wallet, but they don't have all the big ideas. And so he invested in my deal, and then there you go. So I got so many stories to tell you guys tonight. By the way, I can't even believe I'm up here. I mean, the idea that I'm in the category of a legend is A, number one, really humbling, and number two, like, pretty low bar for you all to set, I would say. But I cannot tell you how incredibly blessed I am in my life that I was born at a time, and I was exposed to the life of a wildcatter by my dad when I was a young man in growing up in Abilene, Texas. And I'll never forget, I was out caddying. I was one of the kind of these kids that always worked. You know, I was either painting houses or mowing lawns or delivering the mail or delivering the newspapers or caddying or whatever. And I started caddying for all these like crazy guys, and it would be like Moon Pickens and Tom Brown, if you all remember Tom Brown, Don Evans, who was just coming up at the time. And I said to my dad one day when I was driving home in the car, I said, Dad, what do all your friends do? And he said, Bill, they're all independent geologists. And I loved it because they had this joie de vivre, or something else. I mean, it was a, you couldn't tell if they were rich or poor. They had made it, they had lost it, but they were always happy, and they were always full of life. And I was very lucky. I knew when I was young that I wanted to do that. And my college roommate's here tonight, David Printer, who's probably the #1 headhunter in the country as far as talent. And Printer, you knew since the beginning this is what I wanted to do. You know, I never had to worry about what I wanted to major in. I knew what I wanted to major in, and it was not because I wanted to be in geology, it's because I wanted to be in oil and gas. That was just it. Because I had seen all these guys, and I said, I want to be a part of that shit. Because those guys were fun. And so, I cannot believe how fortunate I am in my life to have this, and I can't believe how fortunate I was to meet my wife in Geology 101, freshman year at SMU, because the wife of a wildcatter, I mean, you got to be willing to go through a lot of hardship. I mean, we probably bet our net worth no less than 25 separate times, and most people are not up for that kind of risk profile. And so she was going to be here tonight, but she had to take care of her mom on an emergency surgery. Everything's fine, but she would be here tonight, and it's good that she's not here tonight because she would tell me that I've got to make this PG, but I'm not going to because I don't have my wife to, tell me not to say fuck. By the way, the over and under on the F-bomb was 6. I'm already over. Well, it's unfair that I tell the Halbany story because I knew that was a given 5 right out of the box. So anyway, I didn't want to sit up here and give a typical PowerPoint. We gave this PowerPoint at the Discovery Thinking seminar at the AAPG this year, and it was really fun. It was great, actually, and I think we had a great turnout. It was a packed house and a lot of good comments. But I prefer to be a little bit more loosey-goosey, and I could be a little bit more open with this group than I could with that group that night, because that was a bunch of technical people and, you know, kind of boring, dirty guys. And I would rather just talk about like how how you really find oil and gas, and the thought process that I go through and what my team goes through. And I just want to say that, like anything else in life, this isn't for everybody, but it is for me. I mean, I like it. The vast majority don't like it. They couldn't deal with the stress. They couldn't deal with the emotional roller coaster that you have as a wildcatter. Wildcatters have always been my heroes ever since I was a young boy. And I mean, you go through like famous guys. Obviously, you know, the Boone Pickenses and the Bill Saxons and the Tom Jordans and all these people. I mean, I've always had a natural kinship to these guys because they get it. And I've often thought about what is it that like makes a wildcatter? Because I don't really like the term. Actually, I like the term wildcatter, but I don't like the idea of my calling myself a wildcatter because that feels cocky or egotistical or something. Because but it's always the way I've felt about things. And wildcatters have in common, number one, they're not afraid of risk. They're almost always optimistic. They're always looking at the high side of life. And I've always been that way. And so I was naturally attracted to the exploration, kind of wildcatting concepts. I've done all the other stuff. You know, I've you know, burned money by drilling unconventional wells for a long time. We can talk about drilling unconventional wells because it's a joke. Because if you want to light your money on fire, go drill a bunch of unconventional wells. And here's the reason I say that. Everybody brags on how great the unconventional play is. It's great for our country. It's great for the world. It's great for supply. But I am in those plays. And unlike everybody else, I am paying for it with my own money. I'm not paying for it with shareholders' money or private equity money. I'm paying for it with my money. And I'm telling you, it doesn't fucking work. The trillions of dollars they wasted in the Permian and in the Marcellus and whatever. Now, granted, they're making money now, but it's not unlike building a 100-story skyscraper in New York City, and all the original investors lose all their money. But the guy who buys the skyscraper later and then just decides to charge rent, now they're making money. And that's what's happening right now in the unconventional play. And I can show you because I was in a tier 1 unconventional play. It was actually in the Bakken. And we had discovered this nice Dupro field, and we'd gotten our money back, 20 years ago. And Charles, here comes the Bakken plate, runs right over our land position. And I tell my guys, I say, guys, we're not gonna fucking do this because I'm not gonna burn my money the way everybody else does, right? And they go, no. And they went and they evaluated the decline curves, and they said, okay, here's what we expect per well, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, guys, no way I'm doing this. And so this gives you a sign of the times. This may be too technical or not. I said, guys, I have 20 AFEs on my desk because, a typical deal. Here they come. They're hitting this AFE. And I'm like, guys, I don't want to sign these AFEs, but in order to be in the wells, I have to sign the AFEs. And then once we sign the AFEs, I'm going to flip this deal with somebody because this is a money loser. And so we signed the AFEs, and we called the company up and said, okay, they're all signed up. And I'm telling my guys, let's go turn this to somebody who wants this dog shit. And this company says, okay, you want to know how the wells turned out? And I'm like, what? You don't AFE me before the wells were drilled? They said, no, we're so far behind in our land department that the wells have already been drilled and fracked. And I'm like, oh, call. So I couldn't flip it, so I decided, like, we're in. We're in. That was 12 years ago. And this company, I'm not going to tell their name, but this company would make press releases about 100% IRR wells and great payouts and costs coming down, et cetera. But I can show you 12 years later, all dollars out, all money's in, we will never get our money back. But yeah, it was a huge win by the company that did this. So I'm telling you, there is no leverage you can get in the world more than a successful wildcat. I don't care what they say. So, but I am glad I burned my money a little bit in the unconventional plate, because I can tell it. I can tell it and show y'all, and I'll show you the books, and you will just go, fuck, you're right. Because it's always something. It's all the stuff. The best investment banker in the oil business is right at my table tonight, Chad Michael. He's the head of TPH, and he and I talk all the time. And I always say to him, I said, Chad, it's always something when it comes to unconventional. Either it's basis differential or water disposal or collapsed wells or something. It's always something. Anyway, I know I pissed off everybody in the room by dogging unconventionals, because I know the entire United States has gone into to unconventionals in such a massive way. But I'm just saying the brighter days are ahead of us, because now we're out of running room in the unconventionals after the last 15 years, and we're now getting back to something that matters. So, is that okay to say that, or do I just piss everybody off in the room?
So this is explaining why you jumped in with both feet to Alaska.
All right, well, let me tell you why I got into Alaska. And this is like, I don't want to get into too much detail, because I only have 2 hours left, and I've got about 5 hours worth of material. No, I'm going to talk fast. So, by the way, I love questions, and I don't like questions at the end necessarily. So if you have one in the middle that that is super intriguing and whatnot, raise your hand and I'll ask it. But make sure it's a good question. Don't bring your B game. Bring your A game. If you're gonna do it, and I'll be the judge of whether it's an A question or a B question. So let me tell you how I got into Alaska. It's actually quite, I think, pretty interesting. I've been wildcatting all over. I bent my pick and found some fields. And by the way, let me tell you how I got into wildcatting in a big way. I was young, and I did what everybody told me to do. I started playing the DJ bass, and that's a Halbody story. And I did Kansas, and I did the powder, and I did all the stuff that an independent's supposed to do.
Good places to start.
Good places to start. But I learned really early on that the best competitors that I was up against were other tenacious independents. And I realized quickly that I'm just picking shit with the chickens out here. I mean, because if I find something really good, I'm gonna do fine. But if I want to really do well, I got to get in front of the pack. So I suddenly found myself gravitating to deeper plays, and suddenly all the competition melted away, because all the independents were in there playing the typical stuff. You know, whether you're playing a Medusa play in the powder, or whether you're playing, pick your DJ bass and play or whatever. And so I decided to go deeper, and suddenly I found myself, all I was competing with were the major oil companies. And
wow.
And I found that I could absolutely run circles around the major oil companies when it came to creativity, thinking big, deal trades. They could only beat me when they were at an auction, raising their hand at a fucking auction, because they had the checkbook. And I realized, like, okay, I can compete with that world. So I started going into the deeper plays, and it worked out really good for me, because there was no competition except for the big boys. And I mean, believe me, I struggled for a long, long time. And my wife and I were as broke as a joke from the age of 25 to the age of 40. And one of the plays that semi-changed my life was, I was drilling a well in California in the San Joaquin Valley, San Joaquin Basin. And as all y'all know, who's ever worked the San Joaquin Basin, it's a heavy oil play, right? Everybody knows that. But I came up with this really cool, kind of what I thought was very cool idea of chasing a sub-thrust play on the west flank of the San Juan King Basin, underneath the sub-thrust, chasing high-pressured gas in a heavy oil play. Trust me, I was laughed at by a lot of people. And we drilled that well, it was 1998, and right before Thanksgiving in 1998, we hit our pay zone and it blew out doing 250 million cubic feet a day. It was the biggest blowout in the history of California. It was one of those things where I can't explain to you how the feeling of vindication was, because it was just like everybody laughed at me, and I said, no, this is a really good idea, and fucking A, that thing came in, and there was a Discovery Channel show on it, and it had a radio station because it burned for 6 months, for God's sakes. It was unbelievable. And the guy from Boots and Coots who put out all the wells in Kuwait came and put that well out. And Red Deer had retired at that point, but it was the guys, it was their proteges, and it was so funny because this big guy, he was like Foghorn Leghorn, he comes out to me and he said, yeah, I drilled I put out all the wells in Kuwait. This is bigger, it's hotter, I've done all this shit, this is the best I've ever seen. You gotta love wildcatters. Anyway, that well came in at 250 million cubic feet a day, and you know what? I didn't make a dime on that whole thing. At the end of the day, I never could get it back, but it was really exciting while it happened.
So you're hooked.
I was hooked. I was already hooked prior to that, but that really got me hooked. So anyway, that's one of those wildcatting stories. I can tell you what happened in real time on that thing, because the drilling engineer, who has become like one of my great friends, was on the well, and he saved a dozen lives that night, because when that thing ignited, he had gotten all the people to scatter off the rig and meet on the edge of the 2.5 acre pad, and when that well ignited, I mean, the fire came out like rolling at them, and they're all screaming, ah! And then all of a sudden, all the hydrocarbons that were at the surface got burned up, and then it went straight up in a 400-foot flare. It was really, really spectacular. So anyway, price of oil was $6 in Bakersfield at that time. So I'll never forget being on a bridge, looking at this fire, and you could like literally feel the heat from 400 yards away. And I was on this bridge because it was right by the LA aqueduct, which would have been really bad if it would have like actually breached the aqueduct and taken away all the drinking water of LA, but it didn't happen. But I was on this bridge, and I was watching this fire burn up, and I was like, well, holy fucking A. And there was this young couple that was about 20 years old on the bridge with me, and I look over at this guy looks over at me and he goes, hey, who are you? And I go, hey man, I'm the one who thought of this idea. And he looks at me and he goes, thank you. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, I was on the well. And he goes, and me and all my buddies didn't have work, and we now have a job. And his wife was there, and she just looked at me and she goes, thank you so much. And I realized right then, I go, now this is real wildcatting. Wow. It was just one of those special moments that you don't think of. So, all right, let me walk you through some slides on what we're doing in Alaska. Oh, I was going to tell you how I got in Alaska. So this was in 2000. And I was looking for the next thing to do, and I'd kiss a lot of frogs. If you're a wildcatter, you've got to be willing to kiss a lot of frogs, and picket, coal bed methane, tight gas. That was all the rage back in those days. And there was a well that had just been drilled in the deepwater Gulf of Mexico called Crazy Horse. Y'all remember Crazy Horse? And it totally changed the paradigm that I had about the Gulf of Mexico, because all of a sudden this well was way out there, and it was way in front of the shelf that had all this great reservoir rock, and I'd been taught that you couldn't have a reservoir that good, of that age, that far out. And so I met this young man who was working for Exxon, who was in charge of Exxon Crazy Horse. His name was Matt Furran. And I said, dude, I want to hire you because I want to do what y'all are doing. And I told him what I was looking for. And after we were walking around Nape of all places. And I said, I just want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do something big. I don't want to do something small. I want to do something that's going to move my needle, that's going to give me something excited about life. Because I don't want to live a boring life. I want to live an exciting life, and I want to do something that's going to move the needle and make everybody, make the world a better place, and a lot of people a lot of money. So he came to me after a week of that, and he goes, "Okay, I'm in. You've hired me. Blah blah." He goes, "Let me tell you about a well I drilled on the North Slope." And I go, "Okay." He says, "We drilled a well, and it was right the same year that Valdez oil spill happened." And he goes, all Exxon wanted to do was get out of the North Slope. And they wanted to get out of Alaska. They wanted to get out of the North Slope. And he said, we found 100 million barrels. And I go, nobody walks away from 100 million barrels. He says, yeah, Exxon did. And I go, okay, well, show it to me. Anyway, that was a red herring because that really wasn't a very good idea that he showed me. But it forced me to go up to Alaska and look around. And I was completely mesmerized by the opportunities on the North Slope. And the idea that nobody was chasing it, because nobody was chasing it at all. It was BP, ExxonMobil, and ConocoPhillips. At the time, it was maybe at the end of the Arco days. And I'm like, okay, well, this is really interesting. So I studied it. All my life, I always do everything. We always tear a play apart. You can't just go look at a prospect. You've got to look at everything to make sure it makes sense. Anyway, we went in with both feet, and so what I'm showing you here is the kind of the culmination, the precipitation of those 20 years in Alaska. So hopefully you'll like this journey. I think it's fucking cool.
That's great.
But it's
Let's go.
it's not for the faint of heart.
Hey, Bill.